Nioh is a game that usually gets mentioned when people talk about Souls-likes. I think that it's both a gift and a curse. Being a popular Souls-like that gets brought up when people discuss From Software games is definitely a boon. It increases your reach to the potential customer. On the other hand, many players will approach the game with some expectations and preconceived notion of how they think the game should look like or how it should be played. It's a Souls-like after all, eh? I am a big fan of Dark Souls and Souls-like games in general. I like challenging games that don't hold your hand. Games that let you get lost in them, let you immerse yourself in how unforgivable they are. But most of all, I love those exhilarating moments when, after hours of trying, getting better with each consecutive try, you finally manage to overcome that challenge. It was my favorite part of raiding when I played World of Warcraft. I didn't care that much about the loot. I cared about overcoming the challenge. So I decided to check out Nioh and see what kind of game it is. Also, after completing the game and formulating an opinion, I'm going to check out the most recent 100 reviews on Steam and see if I'm going to agree with other people's points of view or not. Since I prefer playing games couple of years after they launch when they're fully patched and have all DLCs, ladies and gentlemen, this is my late review of Nioh Complete Edition.
An ironic twist. For what awaited us in the Far East wasn't love. It was monsters and death.
Before we start, this opinion of mine is based on 124 hours of total playtime. Completing the game with all optional missions as well as completing all 3 DLCs. This has been done on Way of the Samurai, Way of the Strong and Way of the Demon, which are game equivalents of New Game Plus and New Game Plus 2. I unlocked Way of the Wise and had some fun there too. I have also ventured into Abyss. I didn't get far in there, but still I got to experience this mode. I am also an achievement geek. So I unlocked 73 achievements on Steam, which is 92% of total achievement completion for this game. And according to the in-game statistics, I died 771 times. So with all that said, here is what I think. Let's talk about the plot first. Nioh's story is set during the end of Sangoku period of the Japanese history. That means unifying Japan by Tokugawa shogunate, events during the Battle of Sekigahara, and Siege of Osaka. Of course, it's mixed with a lot of supernatural and fantasy elements, heavily influenced by the Japanese folklore. So players will get to interact with historical figures such as Tokugawa Ieyasu, Ishida Mitsunari, Date Masamune, to name the few. I am deliberately being brief here in terms of plot, just in case some of you didn't play this game or haven't finished the main story yet. Our protagonist will fight against regular human soldiers and bandits, as well as various yokai and evil spirits. I have to say, this was such a refreshing mix for me after playing a lot of games with just samey, high fantasy settings with elves, dwarves, orcs, etc. I also feel like recently we are bombarded with all those Norse mythology references in our games. Valheim, newest 2 God of Wars, Tribes of Midgard, Northgard, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. While all of those games are interesting and they differ from each other, they still draw material from the same source. That's why Nioh's setting felt really exciting to play. It was new and exotic. And yes, I remember about Sekiro and Ghost of Tsushima, but those games were not out in 2017. I haven't played them yet either, so I think my point still stands. Another thing worth mentioning is how cool it was to read about Japanese history and folklore while I was preparing this video, especially after finishing the game. Getting to know the real history behind the events from the game and the characters I have met just grew my appreciation for the work Team Ninja did with the game's story. The adventure starts with our protagonist, William, being locked in a prison cell in London. Of course, he will break free and we will get to experience a great journey full of adventures and getting killed over and over. In pursuit of an alchemist who stole William's guardian spirit Sorsha, we will travel to Japan, where main part of the story will unveil. Sorsha is also a reason why William can't die. It's explained that she is his guardian spirit since childhood, and as long as Sorsha lives, William cannot truly die. I have to admit though, I have a problem with the way story is presented. The beginning is bland. The first 10 to 20 hours of gameplay didn't impress me narratively, and I had tough time immersing myself in the story due to a lot of characters being introduced. A lot of them with different names that I couldn't really remember. The only one that I recognized was Hattori Hanzo, my ninja ally. I even once forgot what my main goal was at the moment, which happens very rarely as I am a type of person that gets immersed in the fictional stories quite easily. It took me about 20 hours to finally memorize who is who. This might be actually my fault, since apparently I am just not good with memorizing samurai names. Even though the start was kinda bland and slow, the game steadily picks up narratively, delivering a satisfying conclusion to the story. The main events of our adventure will unfold during a pre-recorded in-game cinematics. They are done very well. There are also other types of cinematics that look like stylized animated paintings explaining background stories and motivations of certain characters. We get to experience them after unlocking a guardian spirit that belongs to a specific character. I consider that a meaningful narrative reward added to acquiring a guardian spirit, which is a gameplay reward, especially since some of those missions are not mandatory. It just adds depth to the lore and gives you some incentive to do side content.
間もなく石田徳川の間で天下を二分する戦が起きるであろう。
When it comes to DLCs, they offer a solid story arc that unveils more and more with each of the 3 DLCs. Narratively is the same quality as the rest of the game. And the last thing I want to touch on here is our protagonist, William. Well, the best way I could describe him is as a strong, silent type. During most of the cinematics, it's the other characters that will do the talking while William is standing still looking at them. Seriously, I think there is way too many zooms on William when something is happening and he just stares. I found that funny.
あのタヌキには会いたくないの。
Other than that, I can say that he lacks personality because of him being so silent. I get that he might be this stoic type of a guy who doesn't talk too much. Okay, but after spending more than 100 hours in the game, there is not much I can say about him other than he's courageous and inherently that he's a good man. How do I know those two things? Because of brave, dangerous things he does to save Sorsha. Although this one might be egoistic, since she gives him God mode. But there are at least 2 instances of him willingly jumping in to save other people's lives. He does that without hesitation and without even being asked to do so. If the story started bland and get much better, William is a main character that remained bland. Don't get me wrong, he definitely is serviceable as a protagonist, especially a game protagonist where he doesn't get in the way of what's happening in the story. But I think there is a missed potential. First of all, his relationship with Sorsha. We don't see him being afraid or uncertain after losing a spirit that was close to him for so long, and let's not forget, Sorsha makes him immortal. He just chases her without much emotions. Well, maybe sometimes he gets slightly angry. Also, there could be more interactions between William and other characters during cinematics. Maybe he is this way because that's a perspective of a foreigner who suddenly lands in another country with such a different culture and tries to get a grasp of what's going on. Maybe it's that. Now don't take me for a historical ignorant, but I didn't know that William is based on a real person. I just thought he's a random main character insert to resonate well with Western audiences. While researching the game's background for this video, I learned that our William is actually William Adams, who is believed to be the first Englishman to reach Japan. Adams was called by the locals as Miura Anjin, since he was a sailor and navigator. Later in his career, he became an advisor to no other than Tokugawa Ieyasu. Maybe many of you knew that fact, but to me it was mind-blowing revelation, and I want to thank Team Ninja for making me learn a little bit more about history. While in the next 10 years, I might not remember much about generic William from the game, I'm pretty sure I will remember who William Adams was. Okay then, fast overview before I will dive into analysis of Nioh's mechanics. Nioh is not an open world game, it has a mission-based structure. Player chooses a mission from the overworld map and then is transported into a medium-sized level. There are main missions which push the plot forward and there are side missions. Overworld map is separated into regions. You will unlock new regions while progressing through the story. And every mission in the game is replayable, even main ones. It can be used to farm gear from bosses, get back to discover collectibles that you missed, or just to get some levels. I want to make one thing clear. Nioh is putting a heavy emphasis on your gear and gear grind. Players might not notice it right away, but late game is definitely leaning more and more into grindfest. Think of it more as a looter or hack and slash. Mechanics of Nioh gameplay borrow many elements from Software games. I'm going to list those, then talk about each one of them. In the meantime, I will touch on combat system and progression system. So the Souls-like elements in Nioh are gathering souls, which can be lost when you die 2 consecutive times without being able to access your body. Exchanging souls for level ups. Statistics have soft caps after which they are being less rewarding. Systems of bonfires throughout the maps, which are your checkpoints. Equipment has a weight. The heavier the armor is, the slower our character dodges and uses a lot more ki to perform actions. Stamina meter crucial for fighting. To avoid later confusion from now on, I'm going to correctly refer to energy needed to swing attacks as ki, since in Nioh, stamina is a statistic. You can improve during leveling process to increase HP and weight cap. Heavy emphasis on either blocking or dodging in order to avoid damage. Tanking is not an option here. Many boss encounters that are central to the experience. And overall I have to say it's more of a challenging game, so expect to die a lot and it's integral part of the game. There are other similarities, but those are the ones I want to focus on. First of all, we have a system of gathering experience/souls and then transforming it into a levels at a vendor. In case of Nioh, souls are being called Amrita, and we exchange it by accessing shrines. Dark Souls iconic bonfires are replaced in Nioh by shrines. You can pray at a shrine and after death, your character will respawn at the last shrine you approached. Shrines give you options to level up, make an offering out of your unneeded loot, or receive a blessing of your choice. Usually there is at least one in each mission, and of course we have access to shrine in between missions. There are also other currencies in the game. Gold used to buy things and upgrade gear, glory which you can get for defeating other players or revenants, and I will talk about it later. Adding more currencies into the game is a good move. Players have dedicated resource to different types of activities. Amrita is used mainly for leveling, gold everything gear related, glory cosmetic changes, but also gives a way to dump excessive amounts of glory into consumables or crafting resources. Great choice by Team Ninja overall. It gives players freedom in leveling up while still giving them a meaningful choice. Also only Amrita can be lost while dying. We get to keep glory and gold up. In Nioh, each level we get means we have 1 point to allocate between stats. Those are body, heart, stamina, strength, skill, dexterity, magic and spirit. Each of those stats improves aspects of William's combat prowess. Also, each stat, excluding spirit and magic, can increase damage of a certain weapon type. So, for example, body is a statistic that mainly increases William's raw HP pool, but it also has the highest damage multiplier for spears, which means it will increase damage of the spear attacks the most, if we use one. Body will also increase damage of some other weapons for a smaller amount, but it will only give HP for a character like mine, which used swords and bows. The same goes for each other stat in the game. Dexterity, magic and spirit are a bit different. While dexterity also influences weapon damage, it makes your ninjutsu skills better. Magic and spirit do not correlate to weapon damage directly. Magic upgrades your Onmyo magic power and capacity, gives you points to allocate in Onmyo skill tree. Spirit is your guardian spirit stat and also increases your living weapon capacities. I really like Nioh's stat system. Deciding which weapon you main or what build you want to focus on should impact your stat choices. Now, what about those soft caps I mentioned before? Each statistic gives you the biggest value per point spent at lower levels. I'm gonna use hard as my stat of choice now. So 1 point increase in hard stat in a range from hard level 5 to 15 will give us plus 2 ki. Then, at levels from 15 to 40, each point in hard gives only plus 1 ki. Increase of hard in range from 40 to 90 gives plus 1 ki for every 2 points spent. As you can see, there is a difference. I noticed that the higher overall level your character has, it also lowers the influence of each point spent during leveling up. Same as in Souls, you can check breakpoints for all those statistics on Nioh's wiki. I noticed that your level has much bigger impact in the early game than it will have when you reach late game. Late game will be more about what gear will you use and what will be the level on that gear. This is a good time to talk about skill points. Nioh offers 9 skill sheets. 1 for each weapon class, 1 for ninjutsu, and 1 for magic. It further increases the depth of a progression system within the game. Weapon skill trees offer new ways to damage enemies while wielding given weapon. Ninjutsu school is more about tricks and damaging items, different types of shurikens to throw. You can also use mines or throw bombs. Skills allocated in ninja school can be used to either paralyze or poison your enemy. They can also be used to negate those effects if you will end up getting poisoned or paralyzed. Onmyo magic focuses on spells, talismans which buff your capabilities or weaken enemies. Most importantly, those skills give you combat options. There are very little skills that flat out increase your damage, ki or HP. It's mainly about giving you active skills to use during combat. Then you can upgrade said skills. Usually, there are a few abilities that use the same button combinations to pull off. Fear not, you can change which one of them will be active at any given moment. It frees up so many combinations of attacks and just welcomes you into experimenting with combat system. And what a combat system it is! In my opinion, Nioh Complete Edition has one of the most interesting combat systems in action games. It's supported by the great itemization which allows for many different builds, with armor sets and set bonuses. Those bonuses can influence what type of damage or which weapon you should use in order to maximize the damage. I will talk more in depth about gear mechanics, but first I want to explain why I think more developers should take notes from Nioh's fighting system. Nioh Ki meter plays a crucial role during combat, which is a foundation of most of the Souls-like combat systems. Attacking, dodging and blocking consumes different amounts of ki. When the bar depletes, character has to take a breath, can't move for a second, and is completely open for enemy attacks and special attacks. Human enemies also use ki bar of their own, so learning to play around that is very important, and when it comes to fighting revenants, it's crucial. Supernatural enemies have a purple bar that also depletes during their attacks and when you strike them. When you get it to 0, the bar turns red, and while the enemy can still attack you, he can be staggered by any of your attacks. This simply means to just go full ham on that opponent before he will be able to refresh the bar. Both Ki meter and Purple meter work the same for bosses, so the same mechanics apply there. Team Ninja introduced a technique called Ki Pulse. It's basically a tool to faster refresh your ki. At the start of the game, it requires you to press space after delivering a series of attacks. But then, after getting some skill points, you can invest them into making it so you can use dash after a combo and it will work also as a key pulse at the same time. In my experience, it made combat a whole lot faster. Just look at that. Jab, 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 dash, I'm trying to see if enemy is trying to take a swing. No, then jab, 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 dash right away. And this is one of the most basic things player can do in Nioh. Also, blocking is more forgiving than in Dark Souls. You won't be able to find any shield, but blocking with your weapon absorbs all the damage. It does not defend you from grabbing attacks though. Before I started playing Nioh, I heard that this game uses a stance system in combat. As I was looking at screenshots from the game, I could notice that at the bottom right corner of the screen there is this weird wheel of poses. I was afraid that it's gonna complicate the game. And it does, but not as much as many people might think. There are 3 stances: high, medium, low. High stance is an offensive stance with high damage and lower defensive capabilities. Medium stance is focusing more on blocking enemy attacks with a balanced attack and movement options. Low stance is your fast attacks with lower damage option, plus it greatly improves your dodges. Each weapon class gives you different animations for weapon swings per stance. It quickly becomes a lot to take in, but it greatly increases players' options for choosing their combat style. The game offers you a lot of ways to chain combos by dashing and changing stances during combat. I'm fairly certain that to many people this might feel like too much, like the whole thing is just too complex. Well, I'm happy to say that you can finish the game on base difficulty with just sticking to one stance, one weapon, waiting for enemy to do their attacks and countering them with your short combo. I did most of my first new game playthrough like that. It's a good point to start and then just gradually try to experiment with different skills. I am a hardcore gamer and I appreciate the complex game mechanics and systems. I also understand that these same systems must be usable by more casual players in order for the game to succeed commercially. I wish more developers wouldn't be afraid of adding more depth into their games, but also leave some ways for less experienced players to bypass some mechanics. Complexity adds to longevity of your game. Just try to search in YouTube for some crazy combos people are able to do in Nioh. It's truly outstanding. William will be supported in combat by guardian spirits. They are an elemental apparitions that offer both passive and active effects. Each spirit grants a different set of boons as well as living weapon effect. Living weapon is a major offensive buff. It engulfs player's weapon with spirit's mind element and allows to wreak havoc on the battlefield for a short amount of time. There's a good comparison for those of you that played World of Warcraft. Living weapon is basically a heroism or bloodlust, a massive DPS cooldown that you use during a fight. Using it with addition to buffs offered by Onmyo magic lets you melt enemies and even bosses. A great fighting system is nothing without worthy opponents. After all, it's the center of Nioh's gameplay loop. Kill enemies, loot, upgrade, kill stronger enemies. In the grand scope of things, there are 2 types of enemies: human opponents and supernatural spirits or demons. Human opponents are more agile, they use blocks, dodges, but also they use the same key system that you use. When they run out of key, you can punish them. Yokai and other spirits tend to be more bulky, but you can use their weak points to stagger them. Every time you use Shrine during mission, enemies will respawn. Only some strategically placed opponents that you manage to kill will remain dead. Standard Dark Souls stuff. Before I started playing Nioh, I was already aware that people are criticizing the game for the lack of enemy variety. Team Ninja definitely gives us less types of monsters to kill than what we came to expect from other titles. Human enemies usually just use stances and techniques given for a weapon they are wielding. Players that already memorized movement pools for a given weapon know usually what to expect from them. Yokai and other demons have their own animations and attack pools. Here, the deal is pretty standard. Players will learn which wind-up leads to which attack and then decide whether it's a time to counter-attack or move away or block. Successful combat requires you to learn. There is definitely some truth about lack of enemy types, but I feel it's not fully warranted. The game slowly introduces new enemy types in each region and each DLC. It's usually just one new type or a reskin of enemy you already fought, but with some new attacks. To me, that was enough. I will say even more. I feel like Nioh combat in regard of its enemies reminds me a little bit of Doom. Developers have this pool of obstacles, which are adversaries of course. The way they mix them up in an area, the way they use different setups of enemy types makes for an interesting puzzle. Encounters can be treated like a puzzle, where you have 3 different strong enemies. Which one will you kill first? Is that one-eyed child demon your main threat at the moment? But he might be in a minute if you leave him unchecked, so he can grow up. Choices. Playing Nioh felt sometimes like playing a From Software game. There are traps set by enemies or terrain obstacles that you will fall into. Rocks being pushed in your direction, falling floor, those weird zombies waiting just behind the corner in order to jump at you. The way Team Ninja used those traps is very reminiscent of Dark Souls series. Oh, and Nioh offers its own spin on mimics and illusory walls. Both are great and based really well in Japanese folklore. By the way, if you didn't know, you can try to communicate with either Mujinas or Nurikabes by using gestures. After more than 120 hours, I'm not bored of the combat system. I feel like the enemy variety could be better, but it also means that players have a finite amount of learning of enemy abilities and attacks. That knowledge later will be used to farm gear successfully. Ah yeah, and after all that hours in game, I still regularly die to Tengus. I hate them. Regular enemies done. What about boss encounters? There are plenty, and those fights are extremely uneven in terms of challenge. Let me tell you a story. It's a story about my younger self back in 2015 or 2014, when I played Dark Souls 1 for the first time. I was still learning the game and its mechanics. It was the first time that I got to play Souls game. I already died countless of times. This is a story of me being stuck on my first roadblock of the game, the Bell Gargoyles. It's a fight consisting of 2 bosses that will start with one of them active and the second gargoyle joining into the fight after some time passes. I didn't know how to approach the boss. I was still learning and I had to experiment. What made things even worse was the way back into the boss area. It was long and full of enemies. This was a painfully long process for me. To get into the boss area, try to learn, die, come back again, die, and repeat this process. Sometimes I died before I was even able to reach the gargoyle roof. It took me about 5 or 6 hours to finally get the boss down. I did it in the span of 2 or 3 days. After beating gargoyles, I was shaking thanks to adrenaline rushing in my body. I was so happy to have finally beat the challenge. And the process of me noticing that I'm getting finally better and better in each consecutive try, it was glorious. And to this day, it's one of my favorite gaming memories. The same thrill and adrenaline rush was felt by me during many boss encounters in Soul series. Ornstein and Smaug, Knight Artorias, Witch Quaylak, Pontiff Sullivan in DS3, which is one of my favorite boss encounters. In Nioh, I had this feeling only once, and it wasn't even a boss fight. It was in a gauntlet before the last boss during epilogue section of main story. It was on a Way of the Strong, which is New Game Plus, and I was heavily underleveled. That encounter consists of several enemies. If I die before killing all of them, they all respawn. I have to finish the encounter in order to get to the boss. It was hard. Many attacks would two-shot me or get close to even one-shotting me. I had to come up with a strategy. Where to start the fight? So I squeezed myself in a corner of the room so only 2 enemies would see me right away. It would give me some time to try to kill them before other enemies came. I could feel an adrenaline rush when I saw only 2 opponents remaining. I was already out of my living weapon, strongest offensive cooldown used. If I died at that moment, it would mean having to repeat the whole fight. But I did it, and it was my finest combat experience in the game.
どうされた。まだ勝負はついておりませぬぞ。
There are some great bosses in the game. Date Masamune, a DLC boss with a relentless barrage of attacks, distinct phases during the encounter and the chance for one-shot combo. Or Hinoenma, the demon lady that is a potential first roadblock for many playthroughs. I have to say I was hopeful after the fight because it reminded me of a Bell Gargoyle's challenge. I also liked Umibozu because of his gigantic health pool, which made this fight more about patience and perseverance than anything else. I feel like in general, Nioh bosses are easier than From Software bosses. I one-shotted many boss encounters. As long as you accommodate yourself to the game's combat system, you will realize that it gives you plenty of ways to fight tougher enemies. Some of those ways just feel like cheating. And here lies the problem I have with the game difficulty. Sloth Talisman. It's a spell that you can get from Onmyo Magic skill tree. It forces target enemy to move and attack much slower for a short period of time. Sloth can completely trivialize some encounters. Just fire up Sloth, then fire up Talisman that increases your damage, also supported with a spell that reduces enemy defenses, and for a short period of time you have enemy that will take double, triple or even quadruple damage while not being able to move fast enough to react. Fire up your living weapon in the meantime and you can burst down most of boss's health bar or even kill it right away. Fortunately, Sloth's duration is reduced on New Game Plus and higher difficulties, so it's not that reliable there, but still, on your first playthrough, it can cheese most of the fights. I like the idea of stacking up your offensive cooldowns for one massive blow. It can lead to some spectacular, high-risk, high-reward strategies. But I just feel like Sloth Talisman is too much. I liked to use it myself, especially during those non-respawning stronger enemy fights during missions. It helps you unlock the way for future ventures in case you die. It's like planning when to use your strongest ability between shrines. My final opinion about Sloth Talisman is mixed. I get that it's a convenient tool for more casual players to use in order to get to the late game. And it mainly works on the lowest difficulty, first playthrough. It's not that big of a deal. But I have to ask a question. Do you really feel that giving players a way to bypass mechanics of a boss battle in a game that puts heavy emphasis on said battles is a good game design? So, to summarize boss encounters, it's a mixed bag. Most are decent, with some easier and some really hard. Overall, I would say that the game is easier than any Dark Souls. You can trivialize encounter with magic, but you can also just trivialize those fights by simply out-leveling or out-gearing them. Team Ninja likes to recycle bosses. You will fight some of them multiple times during one playthrough. While I am a sound adversary of reusing boss battles because it takes away from initial experience, I also understand that Nioh is a gear farming game, so either way you will fight the same boss multiple times. In the grand scope of things, in this particular game I didn't care that much about reusing boss battles. Unfortunately, Team Ninja decided to inflate challenge in Nioh by the additional missions that players unlock once completing main story. Those are boss encounter missions that offer gang fights. Two bosses that you fought separately before will be trying to kill you at the same time now. Those missions are bad. I think that the philosophy here was that it's an additional challenge for those people that just crave difficulty in Nioh. If we accept it as this pinnacle of challenge that's optional, then I guess I'm okay with it. But it still felt cheap. Gear system in Nioh is really good. Players will be showered with items during missions. Then, after, it's time to choose what can be usable, what needs to be sold, disassembled, or offered up for Amrita. The same item can be of different quality and can have different stats. You can reforge items in order to get better boons out of it. The only problem here is lack of transparency in terms of what certain stats mean. For example, I had to check on the internet what an increase of close combat damage critical means. It means that when you are lower than 30% of health, then the effect kicks in. So just be ready to double check what stats will be the best for you, since some of them are not explained really well. Armor sets are a great addition into your character progression. Completing a set of armor feels satisfying. Also, it gives players additional incentive to seek out and farm for a certain pieces of gear. Now, item sets give you bonuses depending on how many parts you are already wearing. It makes for even more deep itemization. Those bonuses are significant enough that they are worth acquiring. Some of them are straightforward, like close combat damage increase. But there are some that might influence the way you play in order to maximize your gain. You can even try to mix multiple gear bonuses to serve you the best. Players that just wear items because they look cool will still probably benefit from small damage reduction and damage don't increase without having to analyze their equipment. That's an overall great system. I mentioned the Revenants briefly before. During their time with the game, players will notice a red glowing katana stuck in the ground that they can interact with. Those are usually the places where other players died. By interacting with remains, players will summon an enemy NPC that will use the fallen player gear and active items. Those NPCs are called Revenants. Team Ninja played some pre-existing Revenant remains from time to time, so even if you are playing offline, you will encounter some of them. Killing Revenant will grant you some glory points, and you might loot a part or two of the gear it had. If you truly want to play PvP, you have to queue up for a PvP fight. There is no invading in Nioh. There is also an option to play co-op with your mates or some random people, so you can queue up for that as well. When I played the game, Steam showed about 400 to 500 people in game, and it was enough for me to be able to find co-op mates from time to time. To touch on missions a little bit. Most main missions are fine. Locations are big enough and offer many shortcuts to unlock. So even if you die, going back to place of your demise is much easier. Sometimes you will have to take a detour to unlock a ladder or a closed door, but in general, a lot of those shortcuts are very visible. It's also easy to identify those shortcuts. If you see a door that states it opens from the other side, or a ladder that's too high to grab, usually those are places of future shortcuts. I like that design choice, even if it's very artificial. Nioh is also way more forgiving with runbacks into boss areas. Many times there was a shrine or a shortcut to shrine very close, so you don't need to bother with a lot of opponents. Team Ninja is an environmental friendly company. They like recycling so much that they do it with bosses as well as locations. There are some maps reserved for side content that will be used over and over in different regions. Also, after completing a main mission, you will get a side mission in the same location. Enemy spawns will be placed differently, and probably you will start in a different place, but it's still the same location, only slightly revamped. I understand that from development standpoint, this is an easy way to increase game length while saving resources. I am going to give this recycling of content a pass here. Sure, maybe with more time or money, Team Ninja could do better, but it's a game about grind. Usually, you visit slightly changed locations multiple times in other looters. It can be much better, but it's acceptable in here. After completing the game for the first time, player is presented with options that increase Nioh's longevity. There's a new game plus, which is called Way of the Strong. It really is a great solution that Nioh makes each NG plus playthrough to happen on separate map. So even after starting Way of the Strong, you can still come back to Way of the Samurai, which is your base game map, and have some fun there. I also like the incentives that Nioh gives you to keep playing. Way of the Strong not only increases loot levels and enemy levels, most importantly, it adds a whole new quality of divine items that player can acquire throughout the game. Your guardian spirits will be able to level up right now by using Amrita. If you keep progressing through various levels of New Game Plus, you will unlock higher level caps for your guardian spirits, ability to take 2 guardian spirits with you, even higher quality of an items which is ethereal, and finally, in way of Nioh, an increase to level caps of all statistics from 99 to 200. Another option available after completing your first playthrough is Exploring Abyss. It's a mode where you will defeat bosses, which will get gradually harder the further you will get. Before accessing boss on each level, you will notice that William is being affected by some new debuffs. If you want to turn those debuffs off before boss fight, you can take a boat to a small location where you will have to free Kodama. It's pretty much equivalent of Path of Exile's mapping system or Diablo 3 Rift system. Just an endgame time sink where you can access potentially infinite numbers of harder and harder content in order to get better loot. I dabbled with Abyss for a little bit. It's okay. That's definitely a place where you will need to refine your build in order to really get far. I was playing the game on the highest graphics settings, and I have to say that Nioh looks decent. It doesn't look bad, but it definitely doesn't look great either. Some textures look stretched too much. Some of them just look outdated. Lighting is less than impressive. Weather effects such as fog or rain are just basic. And I am saying that keeping in mind 2017 standards, not today's standards. That wouldn't be fair, since the game came out in 2017. Maybe I didn't help Nioh by playing and finishing Horizon Zero Dawn just before I started Team Ninja's product. Horizon was just jaw-dropping in terms of its graphical prowess, lighting and particle effects that game offered, and it's a game that was also released originally in 2017. Nioh does not fare well against Dark Souls 3 either. TS3 was a graphical step up for the series, and it likes to flex its muscles with great vistas and excellent art style. A very distinct art style, which is something that Nioh definitely lacks. I liked how Team Ninja designed their levels gameplay wise. It made sense. However, the visual design lacks in many areas. Nioh likes to restrict players to corridors and medium-sized open spaces from time to time. Doesn't matter whether it's a forest or a big city. Battlefields offer a break with wider areas, but still it's nothing spectacular. Zones aren't very diverse. William will spend a lot of time traversing various caves, cities, forests and sometimes snowy mountains. But that feeling of being closed in a couple of paths with slightly wider areas still prevails. Art direction for the surroundings, backgrounds could be definitely better. Especially backgrounds. They are just completely ignored. I think it's because developers wanted to either save some time or they came to a conclusion that it's not worth developing a detailed backgrounds when most players won't even look there. It's a shame since those backgrounds just remind me of PS2 or PS3 era games that tried to save some memory whenever they could. And I remember that towards the end of main game we get some visually distinct locations that look really good, but it doesn't defeat my argument of lack of details in zones that are more grounded in reality. On the other side, the design of various armor sets, bosses, enemies, mainly the different types of yokai and demons, it's great. Gear in this game looks beautiful. The way they present traditional Japanese armors, make them distinct from one another and also not hilariously over the top, it is a true testament to how skilled Team Ninja's artists really are. Since it's a port from PlayStation, I was worried if there will be enough options in the graphic menu, but don't worry, you can crank up resolution as you will, turn shadows on and off, the same goes for motion blur and dynamic reflections. One tiny problem though, the game is capped at max 60 frames per second, so people like me that use monitors with high refresh rates won't be able to utilize them that much. Sound design in Nioh is good, voice acting is great. Maybe a little bit work around environmental sound during missions would help you immerse a little bit more, but it's not a game breaker. When it comes to soundtrack, there are a couple of tracks that are just brilliant. The rest of them are okay, but nothing special. I have to praise Team Ninja for their usage of those most memorable tracks they got during in-game cinematic. They add much depth and emotion to the scenes happening on screen. One criticism, most of the boss tracks are used by more than one boss. Add the fact that players will encounter the same boss multiple times, and a piece that is really fast and explosive gets old really fast. As I said before, it is a port from PS4, and from the technical standpoint, it's very stable. During my playtime, I only had 3 crashes. No stutters while playing, but 2 times game froze for 1 second during a cinematic, and sound got out of sync with the video. You can play Nioh with mouse and keyboard. However, I will highly advise you not to do that. First thing, even when you choose to play with mouse and keyboard, all hints and instructions for your combos will still show up for a controller. You can change buttons for mouse and for keyboard, but I found out that I cannot map additional mouse buttons on my Razer the Father. Final nail in the coffin for mouse users is lock-on feature. Even the tiniest move to your mouse will make William skip around multiple targets if there are any. That's frustrating. Having said that, I will admit, I finished Nioh on mouse and keyboard. It is possible. I've got some cheap deaths out of chaotic lock-on mode, but it's definitely doable and absolutely not that hard to do. I had to remind myself not to move the mouse during fights with multiple enemies. Why I did it? Because I don't like using controllers. Now I am going to examine other people's opinion about the game and if I agree or disagree with them. It's not that I think that my opinion is superior, not at all. I think that every opinion is valid as long as a person can justify it. What's more, some arguments can make me rethink of my own opinion. Maybe I forgot about something. Maybe I am wrong about gameplay or my combat system evaluation. Let's see. I set Steam reviews to show player reviews from the last 3 months. It shows both English and Polish reviews since I am from Poland. After scrolling for at least 100 reviews, I can say that most of them are positive. Most players agree that the combat system is awesome. Many players praised item build variety. Of course, there were usual arguments about the game being too difficult or just unfair. I think that Nioh is quite fair in its combat system. Even most of the traps can be spotted from far away, so you can just avoid them. The key for that is patience. Just don't rush the game. Game repetitiveness also got called out. Boss and zone recycling got some negative feedback. I already addressed that. I can somehow agree with those points, but for me it's not a game breaker. The 2 boss gang fights are definitely bad though. Some players notice that many fighting areas are really tight and that camera gets shaky if you are in a tiny location. I can agree with that. PC port is getting a lot of critique, especially because of mouse and keyboard settings. As I said before, it's definitely a problem, but still manageable if you are stubborn like me. I can see that some people had stuttering issues. Now this will be hard to prove or disprove since everyone is using different PC specs. I haven't got any stuttering and I'm not using the newest gaming gear. My graphic card is GTX 1070 Ti and it still runs well. A lot of players agree that Nioh is a grindfest. To some reviewers it's okay, others find it bothersome. Many of the Steam reviews agree that the late game is definitely more grindy than the start. Also, there are people mentioning one thing I forgot to mention before. There is this weird disproportion between recommended levels for main game ending missions and recommended levels for the first mission in the first DLC. You see, it's a really big gap. I guess it's because Team Ninja assumed that many players already had some experience in New Game Plus before they released the first DLC, so it made sense to them to make it require higher levels. It's definitely weird. I recommend just playing in NG Plus for a little bit and then at level 150 you can hit DLCs. But I agree, definitely a weird design choice. Another accurate critique that can be seen from time to time is about managing your equipment. It's clunky. There is definitely too much unneeded scrolling. 100% agree with that. Some people claim that the story is mediocre. I can agree a little bit. It starts slow. If you don't know the real history, you can get lost in all the names and locations. But then it really gripped me for the second half of William's journey. And those cinematics are so well done, it would be a disservice not to praise them. So let's just agree that the story is a mixed bag. Oh, and there are some opinions that agree with mine. If you want to cheese the bosses, use sloth. This section is about in-game achievements. To be precise, Steam achievements, since I heard that there are a couple more on PS version of the game. I know that most gamers don't care about achievement hunting, but I care, and I want to briefly talk about it.
Hey! I am no samurai.
As long as you are good and patient enough to be able to finish the game, there is a decent portion of the achievements related to completing certain main missions. Then there are your typical feats, such as reach level 10, then level 100, do this for the first time, do that for the first time. Usually everyone gets those without even trying. Some achievements will require you to do special activities or kill certain enemies during a mission. Don't stress about it. What's great about Nioh is that all of its missions are replayable, which means there is no achievement that you can miss. So play at your own pace. And remember, if you have a problem with requirements for the completion of a trophy, you can always get better gear or outlevel content and then come back. The other set of an easy and not that time-consuming achievements are weapon mastery ones. You can get a trophy for mastering each weapon and for mastering ninja skills and magic skills. Most of the requirements will be fulfilled during the natural game progression. You will be needed to invest additional points in dexterity and magic stuff. For the weapons, you will just need to get enough overall familiarity with each weapon skill. Then for all achievements, you need to complete all corresponding dojo missions and then allocate a point in a mastery trait. Done. It's easy and it's also a really nice way to get some experience with other playstyles, so give it a shot. Nioh hosts its own two types of collectibles. Both of them have in-game effects. First ones are kodamas, small green childlike spirits that player can find during main missions and sometimes during side objectives. If a mission has some kodamas to find, it is shown at the bottom part of the mission card. Every region has 25 kodamas. Finding them all allows you to get more elixirs from shrines and lets you get a better blessing that you can choose from shrine. The other collectible are hot springs. There is one per main mission and there are 5 in a side mission called the Trial of a Master. Hot springs heal you upon use and leave you with a healing over time effect for some time. There are achievements for finding every Kodama and every hot spring in the main game, as well as separate achievements for doing the same in each of the 3 DLCs. The great thing is that your progress of collectible searching is saved when you complete the mission, so when you come back you can focus only on the ones that you are missing. Hunting for those collectibles here is really easy since they are not hidden that well. I was able to find everything during my first visit in most of the zones. Now, it's time to talk about the grindy achievements. Nioh is a grindy game, so it's no surprise that completionists will have to grind a lot. While the requirements are not crazy complicated, they just require a lot of time. And it's not time spending trying to drop that one specific item. It's more of a time needed to grind gear strong enough and of a level high enough to complete higher difficulties. To be honest, if you want to complete all achievements Nioh has to offer, you need to advance to Way of the Wise at least, and you will be able to fill requirements of all the challenges that the game throws at you. As for me, I'm okay with having 92% achievements completion in Nioh. The remaining ones will require me to grind for a better gear, maybe some more levels. It would take a lot of time and I think I'm at the point where I'm done. So I guess now it's time for me to add my opinion into the pile. I think Nioh Complete Edition is a game definitely worth giving a shot. Same as other Souls-likes, it won't resonate well with everyone. However, the game offers a decent story based on real-life events and characters, a challenging gameplay, great combat system, deep and meaningful gear mechanics and loot grind. And I guess here lies most of the conflict about the game between players. Many people might not like the heavy emphasis Nioh places on acquiring stronger gear in order to progress, especially in the late game. Combat feels faster than what we experienced in Dark Souls. There is less variety in the zones players will visit. The same is true for the enemies they will encounter, but overall it's a worthy experience. The Complete Edition offers a lot of content for its price. Some of it feels cheap, like fights with multiple bosses at the same time, but they are optional. Content offered by the game's base story and its 3 DLCs, as well as nice progression offered by multiple New Game Plus, is definitely worth it.
Seems death won't stop chasing me.
I recommend this game.